I know what you're thinking. I do. I know what you're thinking and wondering. You're thinking and you're wondering what good can come out of Sparta? Or Highland Park? Or Wantage for that matter? Those churches where she served before? Or maybe, what good can come out of Bridgewater? That place where she grew up and was raised in the life of the church. And you know what? That is exactly what Naaman's thinking when a messenger suggests that he can be healed by 7 dunks in the Jordan River. What good can come out of the River Jordan? But I'm getting ahead of myself in the unfolding of the healing of the commander of the Syrian army. A story that is revolutionary from start to finish. Revolutionary because it is a young captive girl, one who was taken hostage from Israel, who suggests that Naaman see the prophet in Israel, the prophet of the king, in her hometown. What can she know? It is revolutionary because in an extensive section of the law in Leviticus 13 and 14, a priest would need to leave the camp, diagnose him, declare him unclean. Rarely declare them clean. By entering their territory, Naaman would be asked to break the purity codes for the sake of his healing. It is revolutionary because Naaman, the victorious commander, is fully transparent in his illness, in his vulnerability, and in his humanity. His ego inflation, resentment, and rage, probably masking some real insecurity, are on full display, just as are his sores and his scars. The signs of leprosy that are visible no matter how many battles he has won. It is revolutionary because Naaman is not paralyzed by his dis-ease. And in his outrage at the greeting by the messenger of the prophet, in the absence of the pomp and circumstance fit for a general, or the welcome and the hospitality fit for a warrior king, he flies off in a rage, but somehow remains open to the advice of his friends. He's not too proud, and he's not too strong to listen. It is revolutionary because Naaman of Haram in Syria comes to believe in the one true God of Israel. And our work, too, is revolutionary. Because if we can't interrupt the massive wave of ultra-conservatism and nationalism that is happening all across the globe, what we can do is show the way to the United Methodist Church. We can live into our understanding of the gospel that is revolutionary. Good news for all people is revolutionary. And if we read our Bibles closely, we know that once again the star of the drama is the foreigner, the immigrant, the detainee, the outcast, the enemy, the dirty, the sick, the suffering, or the unclean, who is and they are used as examples of willingness, humility, and healing. Who is used as an example of the generous response that we are called to have to God's blessing, and as an example of how we do come to believe. And Jesus himself will lift up Naaman as an example. In the days of a prophet Elisha, Jesus says, there were many lepers, but only Naaman of Syria would be cleansed. And when the people of Nazareth heard that, they themselves were filled with rage. You see, the people in Jesus' hometown expected Jesus to carry the message to his people. But Jesus, like Elisha, intends to heal the outsiders and bring them in, even the enemy of Israel, to make clear the grace of God is for all people. No wonder the prophet's not welcomed at home. Naaman's healing marks a beginning of a boundary-crossing and religious law-breaking ministry that we live into as progressive United Methodists today. And what's so fascinating is, I know that you know what the lectionary is, right? But each week, pastors and preachers have 4 set texts to work with and study and decide maybe what they're going to preach. Now, not all pastors use it, but the power is that it is very possible that around the globe, this is what the churches are hearing. So you might go home and you might tell a friend that your pastor preached on this Naaman story, and they might say, we read that too. And that's pretty cool. That's called vibration and impact and power. But the lectionary stops after Naaman is cleansed. We don't even learn that he's converted, and I'm kind of okay with that. But we don't read about the generosity, we don't read about the trickster who tries to steal the loot, and we don't read about how his leprosy enters into someone else later in the story. However, there's another piece that we don't read. Naaman, while offering many gifts, asks for one thing in return. Not the double portion of the Spirit that Elisha asked from Elijah, but Naaman asks for a mule load of earth, dust, a bit of holy ground. I like to imagine that he took that back to that young girl held captive, far from home, friends and family, perhaps terrible conditions, and it rings so true for us today. God help us, right? And it is true that Bridgewater for me is holy ground. I still call Bridgewater home. It's where I grew up. It's where God spoke to me on Ash Wednesday and Good Friday very powerfully. It's where my dad was converted, and we didn't even use that language, on his 50th birthday as I sat by his side in the pew. And it's the place where my mother experienced healing in a group called New Life Singles after my dad passed. Healing happens here. And it was at Bridgewater United Methodist Church where I preached my first sermon in a local church pulpit. Many of you know that I spent time preaching in homeless communities, but my first time in a United Methodist Church pulpit was July 7th in the year 2000, 19 years ago today. So I ask you this morning, what good will come out of Maplewood? What good will come from Morrow? And will you join the revolution? On Tuesday, I'll visit the ICE Detention Center as a representative of the ministries of this church. Within those walls are captive people, some who very well may hold keys to the healing of hate, hurt, fear in our communities. Many of you attend to them. Many of you will attend to the sick and the suffering and the grieving in your families, neighborhoods, and workplaces, maybe even your church. Many of you will encourage and advise your friends when they are outraged, ego-driven, and in need of healing and missing the blessings of God. And if by chance it is you in need of healing this morning, if by chance it is you in need of healing this morning, come to the table where healing can begin. If you are in need of healing this morning, be washed in heaven's rain. Amen.